Everyone, thank you. So this is Serpentine Jarrahdale here, our municipal boundaries. On our east side here, we have the scarp. That's clay soils, rock, and over winter, there's a lot of water that comes down straight off the scarp and down into our suburbs here, which is all flat area. So Dale, if we could get the water down to you quicker, we would, but it's very flat. So some of the local features, we have a lot of natural waterways, the runoff from the scarp, we have high groundwater levels, our soils are heavy clay soils, we have a lot of agricultural drainage systems, very limited groundwater resource, a lot of existing vegetation, very strong easterly winds, and rural subdivision amongst the urban areas. In regards to our agricultural drainage system, and I can guarantee you not all our drains look like that, a very small percentage actually look like that. We have over 1,100 kilometres of open agricultural drains, and our new urban developments rely on the flow of these drains to function as intended. And a large percent of these drains run through private property. So, and as we get more development, more of these drains are contained within private property, affected by whatever people do in that property, and more fences across the drains. So, some of our challenges in development is the importation of fill. Have high groundwater levels, clay soils, so development is importing fill, so there's a loss of a lot of native vegetation. There's low to no infiltration in the on-site soils. Drainage systems are reliant on subsoils and free-flowing outlets. Old developments tying into new developments. So we have our old original suburbs such as Serpentine, Mundajon, Byford, where you've got, they're 40, 50, 60 or more years old, and trying to tie in new development with those suburbs and infrastructure where those levels are already set. The public open space becomes the low-lying leftover areas, creation of large drainage detention basins. We have very limited groundwater for irrigation, and there's pressure to implement our treatment areas higher up in the catchments, such as at rain gardens in the streets. And we have perched groundwater in the basins and swales. So where we're left dealing with the POS areas as the leftover low-lying areas, we often end up with results like that in the POS, where the systems that are installed rely on the downstream systems functioning and flowing, and where everything's installed at sort of minimum clearances, it relies on the maintenance of those downstream assets to flow and function, and when there's any blockage or issue, which there always is, then the system fails upstream. So some of our water-sensitive urban design solutions are basically treating and infiltrating the stormwater as much as we can offline. Now, one example of those is rain gardens. Now, rain gardens, they're often not irrigated. They require subsoils underneath them to help them drain out and to prevent groundwater rising into them. They're in extreme conditions, and plant survival is challenging. They're in a road environment, surrounded by footpaths, buildings, often not irrigated. You're very limited. They're a good alternative, but very limited on locations, normally side boundaries of properties. They can be incorporated into public open spaces where they're more successful than adjacent to roads. There's very limited local tree species that can manage the conditions and act as good street trees also. Very limited education to residents, which results in the rain gardens being vandalised, trees removed, filled in, rubbish put in there, just use it as their own tips, or if they don't like them, fill them in. Previously, prior to actually physically constructing walls and boundaries to them, rain gardens were put in without those structures. They were really depressions in the verge, and a lot of those have been filled in, so the water just keeps getting pushed down downstream, and the maintenance costs of these are high and they need to be considered long term. Some other examples are street swales and median swales. So these typically manage the first 15 mil and sometimes more. Again, subsoils are required for those. And this is in the Serpentine Jarrahdale scenario, given the soils we have to deal with. The rural areas used to control groundwater in some cases, especially those agricultural drains. They're often not irrigated. The plant success is challenging due to the extreme conditions again, and again pressure on maintenance costs due to traffic management costs as well. So in Serpentine Jarrahdale, some good examples of other treatment methods is the multi-use corridor. So the rural drain system that was in the first slide is often converted into what we call a multi-use corridor. So you have the original drain, which is normally reworked, because typically the agricultural drains are steep-batted, steep-sided, so they're retrofitted basically to fit in an urban environment. So it'll contain the multi-use corridor will contain the natural waterway through the centre. You have your smaller basins for treatment of the water. Within that corridor, there's open grass areas for active use, integrated with the footpath systems, pathways and nodes, and interaction and education with the waterway. Some examples of systems that haven't worked, and this is one that we've been able to address. So the background to this was it's a public open space with it's over 9,000 square metres in area, surrounded by urban residents. So historically, approval was given for the earthworks to be completed. This was the final location for the stormwater treatment area, and construction of the development happened upstream, and this area was left sort of towards the end to finish. So developers paid bonds for the remaining engineering and landscape works to the basin. The initial design was to construct two basins in this area, so the treatment area and then for the larger events, the basin to the south here. And so in this POS of 9,000 square metres, the result would have been zero usable area. The basin levels were set due to previous approved stages many years ago, and this basin has held water for a number of years, and the groundwater is exposed at the base of the basin. So in working with the developer recently, we've come up with some solutions to install So in this situation, when we've reviewed the system, it was clear that we had free-flowing outfalls for the system and the subsoil. So we've working with the developer, we've gone back, and the developer's retrofitted subsoils to the extent of the second basin in here. Turf, the design was revised. Turf was able to be installed in the basin. Now, to get that to work and have the free-flowing subsoils, we did have to make concessions on the inverts of the subsoils, but the benefits were we got an active area for the residents and the local community, and integrated the stormwater treatment with the usable POS. This is an example of it achieves what it needs to achieve, but from the local community perspective, residents are not too happy that they have a public open space that doesn't have a lot of usable area. So all the stormwater treatment and management is within the treed area there, and it's all planted out. There's separation to the separation of the drainage from the public open space area, but it left very little area for the actual active open space area. that basically resulted in there's limited open space for the local community. We get a lot of complaints about this from the local residents. There's a large planted area which is really a lost opportunity for integrating the drainage with the active POS, and large planted area like this now are quite difficult to maintain, especially when so close to houses. I guess this is a better example of how the two can be integrated. So you've got your stormwater basin with your bioretention area in this area. The larger events will flow over into a turf active area. And there's just some more sections here where you've got boardwalks for integration of footpaths and mobility through the POS and over the drainage area, and obviously the provision of the active area. And that's it. So when you're relying on downstream maintenance and function of the system, it's very hard in sort of our situation where you're dealing with large water volumes, very flat area where we're just meeting minimum requirements in everything that it will often fail when you're looking at minimum separations, matching inverts, and just ticking that box so that it meets the requirements, but it's actually very often fails when you're relying on downstream systems. Thank you.